Hey guys, I'm Paul.
Hey, I'm Jake.
Last week, Jake was nice enough to invite me to a pre-screening of Aquaman.
It's been a couple days since we saw it.
We've had some time to kind of think about it, mull it over. But yeah, initial impressions?
So I think that getting out of the theater, I was pretty pumped. I really enjoyed it. After the weekend, sitting with it a little bit, I'm not so sure anymore. I still think it's a good movie, but I would say it hasn't really left a lasting impression on me in the way that other movies, maybe like Infinity War or even a Deadpool. But I still think there's a lot of good in it. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah.
Almost a week later.
I think that's totally fair. I think that Jake and I, and I'm sure many of you, had the same apprehensions going in. The DC movies haven't been batting 1,000. Far from it. Aquaman is not notorious for being the most interesting superhero.
Yeah, he's usually very like buttoned up, very serious, right? That's my sort of impression of him, at least from like the cartoon.
What are you so serious about, dude? It's fish.
With Jason Momoa, you kind of expect something a little more goofy. His Game of Thrones character is one thing, but his persona as an actor is much more like laid back, fun, I think. So you're sort of looking for that. And I think they deliver on that. It's definitely a fun movie.
Yeah, it's very fun, and you're right, he provides some of the comic relief in the Justice League movie. And he is definitely, I think, a new interpretation of Aquaman that we haven't seen before. But yeah, I went in very nervous that it was going to be super lackluster and just kind of fine. It was crazy fun. I think it was more fun than it had any right to be.
There was a lot of really fun scenes. I loved the globe-trotting adventure that Jason Momoa and Amber Heard, who plays Mira, go on to try to like find the ancient tridents. I don't want to get into any spoilers, but that's like the very basic setup of the movie. That's in the trailer.
There's like some genre shifting into.
There's like some Indiana Jones style like temple raiding stuff.
Unexpectedly, and it's great.
And then we get this really cool fight scene in Sicily, beautiful setting, and they're like running around, running over roofs. The Atlanteans show up in these like really weird, cool like power suits.
Very Power Ranger-esque.
Yeah. Plus, and this brings us to, I think, the highlight of the movie for me, Black Manta. I thought the actor was amazing. The character was awesome. The way they designed his suit and everything, super cool. They set up this really interesting dynamic between him and Aquaman from the beginning, where he has a real vengeance story to why he's fighting Aquaman. And then there's the other villain, Patrick Wilson, who I thought was a really interesting character too. Really good actor.
Yeah.
He's bad, but you kind of identify with him a little bit because he is blaming humanity for like poisoning the ocean and killing each other and all these things. You're like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But then a second later, he's just like betraying everyone and being a real dick. So
yeah, you won't have a hard time rooting against him. I was really glad that they involved Black Manta because I was worried that they were gonna do what Marvel does for origin stories, which is make the villain just a bad version of the hero.
Which was what Patrick Wilson was.
Right, exactly. So they had that in there, but they also had
like a cool, different type.
Yeah, a cool, different, still ocean themed, but like different motives, different background, different powers villain, which I thought was really cool. And it did not at all feel like it was biting off too much.
I don't think so. I definitely think it's a long movie.
Yeah.
It's not boring, but it's not gonna fly by. You are gonna notice that you're in the theater for 2.5 hours. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think there's some movies where you're like, that was 2.5 hours, I barely even noticed. And there's some where you're just like, I can't even be here anymore. This is right in the middle. It earns 2.5 hours, but it doesn't fly by, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right. They maybe could have chopped some stuff out, but I still had fun. How do you think it stacks up against some Marvel movies we've seen?
Yeah, I think they definitely inject a little bit of that Marvel style, especially when it comes to the sort of like fantastical worlds. When they bring you to Atlantis, it's just like, it feels very much to me like Guardians of the Galaxy, where just like these like incredible, huge, fantastical worlds that you've never seen before, and they're so perfectly visualized. You're just getting a taste, but you really get the sense of like the scope of this thing.
Yeah, Atlantis was like magical. Like it was so cool. It's such a foreign landscape. I think it did a really good job of trying to be a comic book movie, especially the fight scene in Sicily that we were talking about. Felt very fun, maybe a little bit lower stakes, but still actiony, comic booky, and not too dark and gritty.
Yeah, I think that's been really a big issue with DC's whole thing. It's actually like, we're 10 years out from Dark Knight, which sort of set the tone for the whole DC movie universe. They've basically been trying to emulate what Christopher Nolan did for 10 years with like mixed results.
Yeah.
And so, I think it was great that the director came in and just sort of said, we're going to do something totally different. I think there was a script that Zack Snyder had put together, and they sort of ditched that, and they were like, we're going to do our own movie, we're going to make it fun, but it's going to feel like a comic book. That's a good point, like what you said. It feels like a comic book movie. It doesn't necessarily feel like a DC movie in the same sense.
Yeah, which I think is probably, in the current climate of DC movies, a good thing.
Yeah. In some ways, it's not as good as Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was like a very high bar.
Yeah, I agree. I think it did not meet that bar. I think the ending of Aquaman does a better justice to the rest of the movie Aquaman than the ending of Wonder Woman did justice to the whole movie of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, the ending is, I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending is really badass. It's a huge, epic battle with all these different armies, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's very, very cool.
One of my points, which I'm a little conflicted on, is the origin story. So this is an origin story, even though it takes place after Justice League.
Right.
We do get his full backstory, where he came from. You see him as like a little kid. There's like a few different actors playing young Jason Momoa throughout the years.
Yeah, I think there's 4 different Aquaman actors.
Plus, we get to see his sort of rise to really become Aquaman. I'm not really sure whether that's necessary. I do think they could have probably cut 30 minutes of origin story and the movie would have been fine without it. Maybe the Aquaman deserves it. I think, you know, Marvel got plenty of time to sort of give everyone their backstories, and we all, you know, accepted it. And if DC wants to do that, I think they're doing a fine job.
So, Jake, for the superhero and comic book movie fans out there, what would you say to a fan that might be weary about walking into or spending their money on the new Aquaman movie?
I think it's worth it if you're a fan of these movies, even if you haven't liked the past few DC movies. You'll enjoy it. It's fun. It's worth seeing in theaters because it's really this like huge, epic, cinematic journey, and you're not going to get that as much if you watch it on your computer when it comes out on Netflix in like a year or whatever. Maybe the only reason not to see it is if you really do love these like more edgy DC movies and you're just like a Dark Knight diehard, then this is not really going to deliver on that. It's not that gritty. It's a lot of fun, and if you're into that, you'll enjoy this movie.
Yeah, that last end scene, you want to see it in a big theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot to look at. Cool. Thanks a lot, Jake.
Thanks for joining me.
So guys, if you like this review, or if you watch Aquaman and disagree with us, please let us know on YouTube. And while you're at it, why don't you like and subscribe? It's right there. Just click. Just see that? Click that button. Click it.
Click it, please.